The Sierra Nevada, California, Part 5, Perspective. Akira's arms and legs went weak, and she fought to hang on to the pine tree she had climbed. She couldn't believe what she was seeing was true. The giant sequoias were on fire. The monarch's shaggy leaves, so high off the ground that normal forest fires never touched them, were burning like torches now. The Morris fire's flames were so big, so intense, that they could reach the top of a giant sequoia tree 250 feet in the air. Akira closed her eyes. Just that morning, her father had been reminding her that giant sequoias couldn't burn, that they were adapted to survive wildfires, and they were. But they were built to survive regular wildfires, not wildfires like this. Akira cursed and shook the top of her tree in anger. She felt so helpless and so stupid. Her father had said that the earth could take care of itself, that this was all part of a natural cycle. But if the giant sequoia trees that had evolved not just to withstand wildfires, but to thrive in them. If the giant sequoias were burning, the cycle was broken. Akira felt the pink fire burn skin glow, hot with shame. She had never challenged her dad on climate change because she had hated to argue. She'd liked peace and calm and quiet, but staying quiet was the same as agreeing with him. And while she said and did nothing, her world was burning. Her dad always told her to get higher when she needed a better perspective on things. And now she had. Nature wasn't just going to fix itself. Not this time. Human beings had broken it, and it was up to human beings to fix it. Thoom! Something exploded in the valley behind her, and Akira turned to look. A giant orange fireball in the shape of a mushroom cloud was pouring thick black smoke in the air. Akira had never seen anything like it before, except in pictures of wars. Had one of the smaller wildfires blown up a gas station? The same hard, hot breeze that swept Akira's hair away from her face cleared the hazy smoke away from the valley, and Akira sucked in her breath as she realized what she was looking at. She had thought the fires on this side of the mountain were small, isolated, but they weren't. They were connected. All of them. The fire that had chased her and Dodger to the bald, and the fire that lit up the gas station were part of one big fire, stretching back through the valley and around the base of the mountain she had just crossed. It was Morris. It had always been Morris. The fire she had escaped with Sue, the fire that was burning the monarchs above her, the fire in the valley below, the same gigantic megafire burned up and down and around the mountain, connecting both sides. Through the smoke, Akira spotted the firefighter she'd seen before down in the valley. She watched as they gave up trying to cut a fire break, abandoning their bulldozers and backhoes to the fire and running away. No, no, Akira cried. She didn't want the firefighters to get hurt, but she didn't want them to quit either. Without the fire break to stop it, Morris was headed right for Akira's house. Churchill, Manitoba, Part 5. Polar Bear Throwdown. Nanak sensed the other polar bear immediately. He was up on all fours now, and Owen watched as the two big bears began to circle each other warily. Nanak hissed. The new polar bear growled. They got closer and closer to each other, slowly wagging their heads back and forth and holding their mouths open. Owen knew what was going to happen next. These two bears were about to throw down. Owen was excited. He'd seen polar bears fight from the safety of his parents' tundra buggy, but never up close and personal like this. In the summer, male polar bears sparred the same way George and Owen did in their insult contests for fun, not really trying to hurt each other. Things only got low down and dirty when they were fighting over mates in the spring or fighting over hunting territory in the winter. Nanak must have wandered into Boomer Bear's yard, and he's telling him to get off his lawn, said Owen. George looked at him. Boomer, really? Tell me he's not a boomer. Nanak and Boomer put their ears back, stood on their hind legs, and slammed into each other with a resounding thump. Whoa, the two boys said, watching them battle. Owen couldn't take his eyes off the heavyweight fight, and neither could George. The two polar bears pushed and pawed at each other until Boomer pulled away and took a swipe at Nanak's head. Nanak fell on his butt. Boomer pounced. The two big bears rolled around in the snow, grunting and snapping and growling, and totally oblivious to anything else in the world. This is exactly the kind of distraction we need to escape, George whispered. The two boys looked at each other and blinked stupidly. What were they doing sitting here watching when they could be running away? Let's boogie, said Owen. George slithered through the hole in the roof first, and Owen followed. When he was halfway down into the shack, Owen paused to take one last look at the battling polar bears. Good luck, Nanak, he whispered. You show that bully who's boss. Shadows in the snow. Owen and George hurried away from the cabin, leaving the fighting bears behind. The northern lights cast a ghostly green color over the white world ahead of them until dark clouds rolled in and it began to snow, making it hard to see. The boys trudged on in their three-legged formation, shivering and sweating at the same time. They didn't talk as they hiked. They were both too tired, and they had to use all their senses to orientate themselves. In the distance, Owen thought he saw Miss Piggy, the old graphited cargo plane wreck, but it was hard to tell through the thickening snow. He hoped they were there that close to home. It suddenly occurred to Owen that so many of the landmarks around town were ruins. Miss Piggy, the Ithaca, the old abandoned radar facility that looked like two giant golf balls, the Prince of Wales fort, they were all failed attempts to impose Western civilization on the merciless, untamable Arctic. Did the same fate await their whole town? Maybe one day Owen's family would be leading tundra buggy tours through the abandoned streets of Churchill, showing tourists the fallen down graphited buildings that had been surrendered to the snow and ice and polar bears. A huge dark shape standing up on two legs appeared ahead of them in the swirling snow, and Owen and George pulled up short. Not another polar bear, thought Owen, but George clapped him on the shoulder and shook him excitedly. It's the Inuksuit, George cried. Owen saw it now, the tall stack of stones in the shape of a person, the one tourists posed with, that pointed the way into town. They were almost home. Owen and George hugged each other in happiness. An immense sense of relief at being so close to the finish line washed over Owen, and he wobbled. When all this was over, Owen planned to curl up under a big, heavy blanket on his couch and not come out for months and months like a mama bear in her den. Come on, said George. We're almost there. Their three-legged march took on more urgency now. A minute later, something new began to take shape in the snowy darkness, and George and Owen slowed again. Owen was so exhausted he wanted to cry. If this was Nanook, or worse, Boomer, he might just lay down in the snow and be done with it. But whatever the shape was, it wasn't moving. George and Owen approached it slowly, cautiously, and they got closer. Owen finally understood what they were looking at. Bing, bang, boom. The shadowy thing wasn't a polar bear. It was a polar bear trap. Owen had seen traps like this all over town and knew exactly how they worked. The main part of the trap was a big round metal pipe, like the ones that ran under roads to let creeks and streams pass underneath. One end of the pipe was open, with a big trap door suspended above it like a guillotine. The other end was covered by a sturdy metal grate with a big stinky hunk of meat hanging on it to lure a bear into the trap. When a polar bear climbed inside and took the bait, the trap door on the front would slam closed, and bing bang boom, you had yourself a polar bear. And since the whole trap was built on a trailer, all the DNR had to do was come around in the morning, hook the trap to a pickup truck, and haul their prisoner off to polar bear jail. Holy crap, look out, George cried, and to Owen's surprise, George climbed up inside the bear trap. George, what are you doing? Owen asked. Owen sensed something behind him and turned. There was Nanook, as big as life and almost on top of him. Holy crap, Owen cried, and he scrambled up inside the trap behind George. George and Owen slid all the way to the back of the trap near the stinky hunk of meat. They were safe from Nanook for the moment, unless the thump, Nanook put his front paws up onto the edge of the metal pipe and sniffed at it, like he was thinking about coming in after them. No, 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 Owen cried, and he reached up and yanked on the hunk of meat. No, wait, George cried, but it was too late. Wah clank! The trap door at the front slammed shut, separating them from Nanook. George and Owen sat in the dark pipe and panted, their breaths coming out in quick, cloudy bursts. We're safe now, Owen said in between wheezes. We're safe. Yeah, said George, but now we're caught in a bear trap. Miami, Florida. Part 5. Salavayaya. It wasn't a sound that woke Natalie, but the absence of sound. Reuben wasn't howling anymore. Rain wasn't lashing the roof. Wind wasn't vibrating windows. Vague memories of her dreams haunted Natalie as she blinked and rubbed her eyes. Where was she? How long had she been asleep? Natalie propped herself up and looked around, saw a TV and a bookcase and anime posters, a kayak in the corner, Churro asleep at her feet. On the table next to the futon was a framed photo of a young black woman and an Asian American girl posing in front of an enormous tree. Natalie recognized the woman in the photo. Patience. She was in Patience's apartment. The sliding glass door to the balcony was open, and bright sunlight spilled in from outside. Patience stood in the doorway, looking weary and sad. Hey, Natalie said, still groggy. Sorry, how long was I asleep? All night and half the morning, said Patience. You were zonked. Is it over? Natalie asked. In a way, said Patience, and in a way it's just getting started. Come and see. Natalie joined Patience on the balcony, and Churro got up to follow her. The wind was still blowing a little, and a little rain fell even though the sun was out, neither of which was unusual for South Florida. Otherwise, the city was completely unrecognizable. Miami had been carved out of the swamp 100 years ago, and now the swamp had returned. The Everglades to the west, the ocean to the east, the city in between, they were all one giant body of water. The few houses that still stood were tiny islands, separated not by streets, but by wide brown canals. There were boats and new canals, but not in a way that could help. Reuben had cleared the coastal marinas of their sailboats and yachts and dragged them 5 miles inland and dumped them on their sides in parking lots. Cars and trucks were upended and swept up in piles like matchbox cars. Trees were stripped completely clean of their leaves. Telephone poles were snapped in two, and down power lines covered everything in a tangle of black silly string. Natalie picked Churro up and held him close. How in the world had they survived all that destruction, and how would they survive what came next? Adios, Reuben, Natalie said with venom. Salavaya. What does that mean? Patience asked. It's something my Cuban math teacher says when we finish our standardized test, Natalie explained. It means like good riddance. Patience nodded. Salavaya, Reuben, she repeated, and they shared a small smile. Churro barked at the wreckage below, and Natalie turned to look. Someone was trying to climb up out of the water on a half-buried tangle of 2x4s and a sodden drywall. Hey, Natalie called out to him. Hey, are you all right? The man didn't move, and he didn't yell back. He just hung there on the pile of debris, motionless. Natalie gasped and took a step back. The man wasn't climbing the wreckage. He was dead. Oh, God, Patience said. She turned Natalie away quickly and steered her inside. I'm sorry, I didn't see him before. My mom, Natalie cried. Tia Beatrice. Patience hugged her close. It's all right, Patience told her. I'm sure they're safe. Natalie couldn't believe that, but she could not believe it either. Otherwise, she would collapse right there on the floor. Is your phone working yet? Natalie asked. Patience shook her head. There's still no signal. I'm sorry. Natalie bit back a sob. She needed to talk to her mother. But how? When? You're not alone anymore, Nat, Patience told her. I'm with you now. We're going to get through this together, all right? Natalie nodded. What about you? She asked. Is your family okay? I grew up here, but my mom and dad got tired of all the hurricanes and moved us to California when I was in high school. They're still out there. They're fine, said Patience. I'm the one who was fool enough to come back to Miami. I run a community food bank here in Liberty City. That's where I need to get to now. See if I can help folks. What now? How? Natalie asked. She saw Patience kayak in the corner. Of course, that's how she planned to get around the city after the hurricane. Wait, Natalie told her. You can take me in the kayak to look for my mom. Oh, Nat, Patience said. Take you to look where? You washed up 5 miles away from home. Your mom could be anywhere now. Natalie swallowed. She knew Patience was right, but she was so desperate to find Mama and Tia Beatrice again, to be safe, to be home. Patience squeezed her shoulder. Best thing is to get you in touch with the Red Cross, Patience told her. They'll be helping people find each other, and as soon as I get phone service back, you can call your mom. In the meantime, there's a lot of people in Liberty City who could use our help. This is only going to get worse before it gets better. Natalie nodded. She was impressed that Patience could think of other people and not herself at a time like this, but it all felt so hopeless. The time to do something was before the hurricane hit, Natalie said, not after it. Oh, I totally agree, said Patience. We need to have ways to evacuate people in the path of a storm who can't afford to leave, or places they can go to be safe if they can't get out in time. We need to have warehouses full of emergency food and water and medical supplies in advance. And in between the hurricanes, we need to be working on climate change because that's making all this worse in the first place. Natalie was gobsmacked. Usually she was the one going on and on about climate change, and everybody else was telling Natalie to cool it. But Patience was fired up. Natalie got a little giddy, thinking she might have met someone as passionate about all this stuff as she was. But it was hard to get truly excited about anything right now. But Patience, you saw what it's like out there, Natalie said. We can't fix all that. Patience nodded. You're right. But we don't have to do everything, Nat. We just gotta do something.